Hello, my dear adult children of alcoholics and people from otherwise dysfunctional families. Dr. Sofya Vass here with you, and welcome to my psychology channel where I talk about relationships, growing up in a dysfunctional home, attachment styles, and more. In this video, I want to talk about the laundry list, which is the list of traits that were identified to be common in people who have grown up in alcoholic homes. I'm going to go over each point and I'm going to give you my thoughts on this as well as my personal experience with working with adult children of alcoholics. The laundry list comes as a part of adult children of alcoholics culture, the ACA, and it is one of the most important focus points within that community. And the concept was first developed by, introduced by Tony A., who was one of the co-founders of the Adult Children of Alcoholics movement. And around somewhere early in the 70s, a group of individuals who were in recovery from the alcoholic home environment got together, and they kind of outlined the patterns of behavior that they see that they have in common, the experiences that they have in common, the feelings that they share. And they came up with this list that a lot of adult children of alcoholics, of course, still identify with today. And the list has grown since the inception back in the 70s. And the list offers 14 traits currently, and it also offers 14 flip traits. So the flip traits are kind of like what happens also when you go, too far to the other side of that behavior. It also offers the, happy medium traits. And I believe that this list is massively useful, and I actually love the format of the flip side. And I think that it can be really helpful for adult children of alcoholics, particularly that many ACOAs feel that they don't know what normal is and they struggle with this like feeling of normal. So looking at the list and then seeing the roadmap or the goals where you could be if you begin the recovery process and figure out how your past is affecting your present, can be really healing. Like kind of learning like, oh, wait a second, I don't have to be afraid of authority figures. Like that in itself can offer a lot of relief. So yeah, let's go through each point, and I'm going to share my thoughts on this one. Point number 1 in the list: we become isolated and afraid of authority figures. I love that the word fear is included in the sentence because I think fear is the key to this point. Adult children tend to develop a lot of fears around people and not just authority figures. And it is because the act of being vulnerable, the act of being oneself, the act of self-expression, expressing needs, right? It presents the opportunity to expose oneself in front of other people. And that could feel really, really scary. Usually adult children of alcoholics carry a lot of secrets. They maintain distance between them and other people, and not just like necessarily physical distance, like not socializing or whatnot, but more of an emotional distance, keeping to themselves, even if they are around other people, because the fear of self-expression, the fear of sharing, the fear of being vulnerable can feel so completely unbearable that oftentimes there's kind of this energy of fear that a lot of adult children experience when being with other people. Laundry list number 2, we become approval seekers and lose ourselves in the process. And this one, of course, relates to point number 1, losing oneself in order to maintain a certain appearance that the adult child would perceive to be likable by others is due to fear of exposure. And it also comes from a long-standing habit of not being able to be oneself, but instead taking care of others. It becomes habitual for many adult children to take care of others and to be in a more subservient role. And also, I do want to point out that this is generally a human trait. It's a normal trait because we're meant to function as part of the group. It's an adaptive position to take on, helping others and caring for others. It only becomes a problem when there's a vast disbalance of energy between paying attention to one's own needs and problems, and also, the telltale sign of this actually being some form of a problem is when the individual has a really poor ability to express oneself and struggles as a result. So maybe always paying attention to others, helping others, but not taking time for oneself. Point number 3, we are frightened by angry people and any personal criticism. This point I love because it's also fascinating how frequently ACOAs end up being with people who express a lot of anger and are also hypercritical of themselves and hypercritical of others. And the anger that the ACOAs carry is usually expressed unconsciously, and it comes in a form of rage that other people detect. Like, it's very obvious to others that the person is very angry and feels enraged, but the adult child has difficulty connecting to that emotion themselves. And I made a video on this topic previously, so check that out if you're interested. It talks more about anger. This is general point. Point number 4, we either become alcoholics, marry them, or both, or find another compulsive personality, such as a workaholic, to fulfill our sick abandonment needs. This one, of course, obvious, when you grow up around alcohol, only becomes natural to use as well. Although many adult children choose to not drink at all. But the psyche is always searching for something that is similar, no matter how difficult it is. So finding partners with addictions is obviously common, right? It feels similar. So that point is pretty self-explanatory, I think. Point number 5, we live life from the viewpoint of victims, and we are attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. So for this point, in my personal experience working with adult children, I would say this is actually not that common. It's probably less than 50% or maybe even under 30% of the ACOAs. I don't feel like it makes up the majority of adult children. I often see actually the opposite. I see more of dulling emotional expressions and more like militant action-based behavior over totality of like wallowing in victimhood as a general presentation. Although, due to the lack of ability of self-expression that we talked about in point 1 through 3, within relationship situations, there's sometimes this feeling of being a feeling like you're somehow cheated or mistreated by others. But I believe that it has different roots in the presentation over the totality of the victim stance behavior. Oftentimes I feel that ACOAs are the opposites. They actually dull their emotions and kind of move on with life rather than wallowing in this victim stance. Point number 6, we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it is easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. This enables us to not look too closely at our own faults and etc. This is common, and once again, this is normal, and it's even a positive trait. Taking on responsibility and helping others is an adaptive strategy when being with a group, and it is a positive coping mechanism, even to sometimes not be overly concerned with one's own problems and help others instead. The question, though, is how effective are your helping skills, and do they align with your values? Is there like a purpose to your help? For example, you could be volunteering at an organization over the weekends where your focus is directed onto helping others rather than wallowing in your self-centered problems and like the neurosis of your own life. And at the same time, you're around good people, you're making friends, you're making connections, and hopefully you're feeling fulfilled. So you're directing attention onto others to take away from, like your own struggles. But this is a very healthy coping strategy that we all should have healthy coping strategies. And this would actually be great. Now, on the other hand, if you're feeling responsible for your partner's addiction, for example, and spending your time to cure them and help them, you feel codependent on your friends, you feel like you can't do things without other people. Now, in that case, that could be detrimental. So the energy is the same, the coping is the same, but how are you using it? Point number 7, we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others. And this one I would mesh with point number 1, 2, and 3. This has to do again with self-expression and feeling confident enough to care for yourself and express your genuine thoughts and feelings. Feeling like you have the right to do that in life. Otherwise, you feel guilty. Point number 8, we become addicted to excitement. And this point, yes, adult children oftentimes grow up in chaos and chaotic homes. Therefore, they are attracted to fast-paced environments, chaotic energies. The downside of that is being attracted to addictive substances, which is the easiest route to take if you like, excitement, right? You can just become addicted to something. So people who struggle with addiction, toxic gambling practices, risky financial investments. However, being attracted to excitement is not inherently bad. And in fact, it's actually a superpower. When I work with people, I like to take on the perspective of helping people see and accept their nature. So for someone who is addicted to excitement, what are some healthy ways of expressing that? Can that be in a form of some hobbies, some sports, a new learning, some form of a group activity, finding an exciting industry to work in? How can you take a natural personality configuration, something that was already kind of created in you, and turn that into your superpower rather than seeing it as some form of a flaw or a trait that you need to work on? So point number 9, we confuse love and pity and tend to love people we can pity and rescue. And yes, oftentimes adult children fall in love with people that they feel bad for. And I see this one as also a general fear of people. And the more vulnerable and less feared the people who are struggling, right? They're like kind of less feared. And I think it's a part of a self-esteem issue. So if you were to ask yourself, what would it feel like if your partner and friends were happy and successful and did not have major problems? How would you feel? Like, would it make you feel like an outsider? Would it make you feel less than? So oftentimes when adult children look within, they find a sense of discomfort around being with people who are not struggling. And this usually comes from feelings of being inadequate. Versus when somebody is in a helping role and taking care of people who are struggling and vulnerable, you place yourself in a position of control over others and thus facilitate feelings of adequacy within yourself and being needed, which makes people feel good in the situation. And that is also, by the way, the dynamic of enabling. So finding someone dependent on you, and then you also kind of unconsciously maintain them in that position. You wouldn't be able to be with them if they stopped being in that position. Point number 10. We have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and have lost the ability to feel or express our feelings because it hurts so much. Just denial. And yes, this one takes a lot of work. Coming back to the body, connecting with the feelings, and this work is tumultuous, it's difficult, and there's absolutely no denying that is the case. But of course, it's so much worth the effort. And the other side, one would hopefully find a better connection with reality and an increased tolerance of various life situations. The increased tolerance part is super important. Having the ability to tolerate various emotions. Point 11, we judge ourselves harshly and have a very low very low sense of self-esteem. And this point has to do with fear of others, criticism, and perfection. And interestingly enough, oftentimes when ACOAs find this list or some adult children literature and first start identifying themselves in the writings and doing the work, their self-esteem drops tremendously. And I personally believe that these laundry list points and some literature out there can be extremely daunting and really make people feel like, wow, like I really am messed up. I have all these points. I can, can outline 14 points of how messed up I am since my childhood, which is why I always try to point out that so many of these points actually constitute normal human behavior. And you see this in people who are not just adult children alcoholics. And there are superpowers behind each one. You just need to be able to tap into those superpowers. And usually that comes as a result of normalizing some of this, getting help, going to meetings, going through the steps. Point 12. We are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything to hold on to a relationship in order not to experience painful abandonment feelings, which we receive from living with sick people who were never there emotionally for us. And for this one, I would say that some ACOAs have dependent personalities while others are on the complete opposite side, being counter dependent, so going the other way on that spectrum. And as far as dependency, most ACOAs are completely capable, more so than most people, to be fully independent and self-sufficient. Most of the times kids have already learned how to cook from an early age and do their own laundry and get jobs early on and have been able to really maintain themselves and have all the skills in the world to do that. However, yes, sometimes due to fear of people and possibly a general fear of life, ACOAs usually find a partner to be dependent on and try to maintain that relationship at all costs. Losing relationships or people can seem completely unbearable. So there's that kind of feeling of clinginess and so much gratitude for someone who's with them, pays attention to them, loves them. And it's difficult to give up. Even if the relationship is not great, that's difficult to break that bond. So that's where the dependency comes from. Point 13, alcoholism is a family disease, and we became para-alcoholics and took on the characteristics of that disease, even though we did not pick up the drink. With para-alcoholics, there's expression of denial, control, and difficulty with trust. So that all the points listed up above as well. Para-alcoholics are reactors rather than actors. Point 14. When people live with alcoholics, they become overwhelmed and are influenced emotionally to the alcoholic behavior. So when the alcoholic comes home drunk, for example, the reaction would be sadness, maybe aggression, provoking some form of a conflict, some form of a fight, followed by depression, and maybe even withdrawing from the world, experiencing grief, experiencing sadness, stress. But to act would be to organize your life with boundaries and to work on protecting your own well-being by engaging in healthy coping activities. So, of course, even in the acting strategy, one would still be affected emotionally by a family member who is drinking. However, they would have more tools to suit themselves personally that would not be dependent on the other family member. So I hope you found this video useful. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Sign up for a one-on-one session with me and check out my course specifically for adult children of alcoholics, where I go deeper on all these topics and give you wonderful exercises and things to work on independently at your own pace. Happy healing, everyone, and I'll see you in my upcoming videos.